There's a peculiar kind of silence that settles in a home when a child stops listening. It's not the peaceful, blissful silence of a Sunday morning with tea and birdsong. No, this one is heavier. It hums with unspoken frustration, miss, glances and doors closed with just a little more force than necessary. And when your child, this person you've raised from a gurgling, giggling infant into a walking, talking mystery, starts ignoring you, it can feel like a small betrayal. Dressed in indifference, you call out, "Dinner's ready." And the only response is the faint buzz of headphones or the glow of a screen. You ask how their day was and get a shrug if you're lucky. You offer advice and they roll their eyes as if you've just tried to explain how the internet works. Using cave paintings, it stings, doesn't it? But here's the hard truth, wrapped gently. Your child isn't your enemy. They're just lost in translation. And sometimes, so are we. Let's be honest, no parent dreams of becoming background noise. But many of us, somewhere between bedtime stories and please clean your room, find ourselves there. And in that quiet, a question forms. Where did I go wrong? But what if we haven't gone wrong? What if this is simply the middle chapter, the messy bit where everyone is trying to grow? The philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Wise words from a Roman emperor who definitely never had a teenager, but still his point stands. When your child ignores you, you may not be able to control their ears, but you can control your heart, because when the silence gets loud, our instinct is often to fill it with lectures, with warnings, with the sound of our own frustration. But perhaps what it really needs is stillness, a pause, not of resignation, but of strength. Let me tell you a little story. A mom I know once told her teenage son to stop scrolling and help set the table. He grunted, muttered something about just 5 more minutes, and stayed glued to his phone. She didn't shout. She didn't sigh. She simply set the table for one less plate and sat down. When he finally emerged, confused and hungry, she looked up and said, "Oh, I wasn't sure if you were eating with us tonight." That night, he set the table himself. It wasn't punishment. It was presence. She didn't match his indifference with anger. She met it with quiet dignity. This is not about letting go of authority or giving up on being heard. It's about shifting the ground on which we stand. Instead of standing tall on pride and expectation, we kneel a little into compassion and patience. Not easy, I know, but worth it? Here's another thought to hold close, this time from Lao Tzu, a man with outward courage dares to die. A man with inner courage dares to live. It takes courage to live in the discomfort of not being heard, to resist the urge to shout louder, and instead, to listen, even when no one is speaking. Because maybe, just maybe, your child isn't ignoring you. Maybe they're struggling to hear themselves. And in your quiet presence, they might find their way back not just to you, but to who they're meant to become. So tonight, when the house falls quiet again, and you wonder whether your words are still reaching them, breathe. The story isn't over. Not yet. You're still their parent. You're still their home. And sometimes, the most powerful message is the one you send without saying a word. Anger has a way of creeping in unnoticed, like a cat in the night, quiet at first, until suddenly it's knocking over the vase of your patience and licking its paw like nothing happened. When your child shrugs you off, looks through you like a ghost in the hallway, or speaks with a tone sharper than necessary, it hurts. And beneath that hurt, if we're brave enough to admit it, there's something even trickier. Pride. We think, how dare you? Not because we're tyrants, but because we've poured years into this child's sleepless nights. Car rides to football practice, birthday cakes from scratch, and now we get silence, a half-hearted grunt, an eye roll that could launch a rocket. It's enough to boil any blood. But let's take a beat, because there's something we forget in that fiery moment. anger feels powerful, but it rarely leads to wisdom. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who had nothing and everything, once said, "Any person capable of angering you becomes your master." Let that sink in for a moment. If our children, yes, the same ones who used to put pasta in their ears, can press our buttons so easily, then who's truly in control? Anger gives us the illusion of action. We raise our voices, slam a drawer, lecture them with a fury that rattles the windows. But does it change hearts? Or does it simply widen the gap? Here's a small confession. I once shouted at my son because he left wet towels on the floor for the 5th time that week. I ranted. I paced. I gave him the full opera of disappointed parenthood. And you know what he did? He nodded, picked up the towel, and later told his sister, "Mom went full Shakespeare again." I had become a tragic character in his personal play. Not a guide, not a safe place, just noise. That day, I realized something. When I shout, he stops hearing me. Not because he doesn't care, but because I've stopped speaking in the language of love and started shouting in the dialect of ego. What if we flip the script? Next time anger bubbles up when your child ignores your 4th call to dinner, or groans when you ask about their day, try this. Don't react right away. Let the silence breathe. Sit with the discomfort, as awkward as it is. You might even say, with surprising calm, "All right, I'll be here when you're ready to talk." Number, thunder, no lightning. Just steady weather. Because when we choose stillness, we create space for connection to return. And yes, sometimes they'll test it. They'll push harder. Children, especially teenagers, have a radar for control. But beneath their defiance is often fear, confusion, or plain hormonal chaos. They're not trying to destroy us, they're trying to build themselves. And just like Rome wasn't built in a day, neither is trust. Especially when it's cracked by shouting matches and sarcasm. Now, don't mistake calmness for passivity. This isn't about letting your child run wild. Boundaries are essential, like the walls of a warm house. But those walls don't have to echo with rage, to stand firm. Let me borrow from Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the unimaginable and still chose hope. He said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. It is in that space, those few seconds after they defy or ignore you, that the entire story can change. You could roar. Or you could pause. Look at them, not as the enemy, but as the confused young soul they are. And then choose to respond from a place of strength, not pride. Yes, it takes work. And yes, it may feel unnatural at first, especially if you grew up in a home where anger was the primary language of parenting. But if we want a different relationship with our children, we must write a different script out. So next time your child rolls their eyes, turns away, or mutters something under their breath, try this inner mantra. I am not my anger. I am their compass. Because in a world that often teaches children to shout louder, tougher, meaner, imagine how powerful it is when a parent chooses grace instead. Have you ever tried telling your child something important, maybe about values, safety, or self-respect, and watched it bounce off them like a rubber ball against a stone wall? You clear your throat. You say, "Listen, I just want to help you." They say, "Yeah." You say, "You're not hearing me." They say, "I am listening," while doing precisely the opposite. And soon enough, you're talking to a closed door, or worse, an open one with a closed heart behind it. It's frustrating. You know what you're saying matters. You're not trying to control their life. You're trying to guide it like a lighthouse in the fog. But what happens when your beam of light feels like it's being ignored? Do you turn it off? Of course not. You simply reposition it. Because here's the thing. Children don't always reject what we say. They reject how we say it. George Bernard Shaw once said, "The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. In other words, just because words leave your mouth doesn't mean they land where you want them to. You see, we parents often default to the tone we were raised with. Authoritative, stern, maybe even a touch dramatic. It worked then, right? At least we survived it. But children today are wired differently. They're exposed to more voices, more opinions, more noise. And in that chorus of influence, they're not just listening for words. They're listening for respect. Even when they're acting like miniature tyrants, somewhere deep inside, they long to be seen not just as children, but as people. Independent, flawed, occasionally impossible people, but people nonetheless. So let's play with tone. Try this the next time you feel the urge to deliver one of your golden parenting speeches. Whisper instead of raise your voice. Ask instead of accuse. Tell a story instead of reading out a rule book. One mother I know wanted to warn her daughter about a toxic friendship. She didn't say, "You need to stop hanging out with that girl. She's no good." She said, "When I was your age, I had a friend who made me feel smaller after every conversation. But I thought that was normal." It took me years to realize that real friends don't dim your light. They help you shine brighter. Her daughter didn't walk away. She leaned in, because stories invite curiosity. Lectures build walls. Even humor are most underestimated. Tool can build bridges. Imagine saying, "You know, I used to be the cleverest person in this house." Until you turn 13, you'll get a smirk. And in that smirk, a tiny door opens. That's your moment. That's where your truth can walk in quietly, hand in hand with kindness. It's not manipulation. It's communication. And if we want our truth to travel far, it needs to ride on the back of empathy. Now, does this mean abandoning rules and boundaries? Not at all. It means delivering them in ways that don't feel like declarations from a dictator, but guidance from someone who remembers what it's like to be lost. And when they roll their eyes or reply with sarcasm, don't bite the bait. That's just fear in disguise. Children often mock what they don't yet understand. It's a defense mechanism. They pretend they know everything because admitting they don't would make them vulnerable. But if you remain calm, even playful, you teach them that vulnerability is safe with you. The philosopher Kierkegaard said, "If one is truly to succeed in leading a person to a specific place, one must first and foremost take care to find him where he is." We can't pull our children toward wisdom. We must walk to where they stand and speak their language. Then slowly, gently, show them another way. So no, don't change your message. Your truth is needed, but adjust the tone. Tune the frequency. Sometimes the problem isn't the station. It's that we're broadcasting on the wrong channel. And when you speak with humility, humor, and a little humanity, something magical might happen. They'll stop seeing you as just a parent and start hearing you as a fellow traveler on this winding road called life. There's a strange moment in parenting, often somewhere between your child turning 9 and morphing into a teenager, when you realize something humbling. They don't learn much from what you say. They learn from what you do when you think they're not watching. You might have given the world's most heartfelt lecture about kindness last week, but if they saw you yelling at the delivery guy yesterday, well, guess which one they'll remember? Children, you see, are natural-born detectives. And worse, they don't just observe with their eyes, they absorb with their hearts. Your reactions become their playbook. Your tone becomes their default setting. If you're constantly anxious, snappy, impatient, they learn that's how adults behave when things go wrong. They don't question it. They inherit it. There's a saying by James Baldwin, "Children have never been very good at listening to their elders, but they have never failed to imitate them." Exactly. Now, before you throw your hands in the air and scream, "Great, I've ruined them," take a deep breath. This isn't about guilt, it's about opportunity. Because the most powerful parenting doesn't happen in scheduled talks or printed rules. It happens in ordinary moments. When you choose integrity over impulse, let me paint you a picture. Imagine your teenager walks in while you're clearly upset about something bills piling up, a work deadline, an argument with your sister. They expect you to snap, to say, "Can you not right now?" But instead, you look up and say gently, "I'm having a rough day, sweetheart, but I'm glad you're here." That's not weakness. That's emotional fluency. You've just taught them more about resilience and honesty than any book could. Or perhaps your younger child throws a tantrum. The living room is chaos. And instead of yelling, you sit down at eye level and say calmly, "Let's breathe together." In that moment, you're not just stopping a meltdown. You're wiring their brain for peace under pressure. Sure, they won't clap and say, "Gosh, mother, what an elegant emotional response." But somewhere deep inside, something shifts. A seed is planted. Parenting is, in truth, less like programming a robot and more like gardening. You don't see the results right away. You water, prune, and trust that beneath the soil, something's happening. It's slow. It's messy. But when the bloom comes, it's glorious. There was once a father who told his son, "Be honest always." But the son once overheard him lie on the phone to avoid a social invitation. Years later, when the son was caught in dishonesty, he said, "I thought it was okay." You do it too. Ouch. But contrast that with the story of a mother who always said thank you to the bus driver, even when in a rush, even when exhausted. One day, her teenage daughter whispered, "I noticed that. I think it's why I say thank you more." Now, she wasn't lectured into politeness. She watched it, absorbed it, reflected it. Here's a bit of humor for you. Have you ever told your child to stop shouting by shouting? It's like telling them to calm down while waving a frying pan. The irony is not lost on them. It's tempting to demand respect. But children don't give respect on command. They learn it by witnessing it. When you speak to them with dignity, when you apologize sincerely, when you admit your mistakes, they don't lose respect for you. They gain a blueprint for their own humanity. And yes, you'll stumble. We all do. Sometimes we'll say things we regret, slam a cupboard door, or roll our eyes with Olympic precision. But here's the gift. When we show them how to recover, how to say, "I was wrong," how to repair, how to forgive ourselves, we give them permission to do the same. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Parenting echoes the same. Stop demanding better behavior, be the better behavior. In the end, the quiet moments matter most. The cup of tea you bring them during a stressful night. The way you hug them a little longer, even after an argument. Sigh you hold back and replace with a smile. These are the things they carry into adulthood. Not the chore charts or the rules stuck to the fridge. So the next time your child seems lost, distracted, or disrespectful, don't shout louder. Shine brighter. Let them see the very kind of person you hope they'll one day become. So here we are, dear parents, at perhaps the hardest truth of all. You can't control your children. Not really. Not forever. And that's not failure. It's design. It's the very proof that they're growing. Now, don't panic. I'm not suggesting we throw rules to the wind and let toddlers pilot the ship. No one wants a house where cereal is eaten off the floor and bedtime is an act of negotiation led by lawyers under 4 feet tall. What I'm saying is this. When you've tried everything discipline, lectures, silence, consequences, and still feel like you're losing them, perhaps it's time to stop chasing obedience and start chasing connection. There's an old Zen saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. But in parenting, the teacher often appears too early, talking, warning, explaining while the student is still in bed with the covers over their ears. So we knock louder. We push harder. But the truth? A child who feels seen listens more than a child who feels scolded. Connection isn't about being their best friend. It's not about saying yes to everything or becoming the human vending machine of approval. It's about letting them feel deep in their bones that even when they mess up, your love is not on trial. Let's say your teen has lied. Again, your instincts scream, punish. But before you storm into action, try this. Sit down, breathe. Then say, that lie hurt because I want to trust you. But it doesn't change the fact that I love you. You just reminded them they're still safe in your love. Now you can talk about consequences. Now they might hear you. Because shame shuts doors, but compassion opens them. Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." Likewise, a child who feels deeply loved and connected can survive even the hardest rules and the roughest days because they know why you're doing it. Connection doesn't come from control. It comes from curiosity. Ask questions without judgment. Invite them in instead of pushing your will out. Try this on a random evening. Knock on their door, not to check their homework, but just to say, "Want to watch something silly with me?" Or, "I made your favorite snack, no strings attached." Or, my personal favorite, "Tell me something weird you saw today." They may grunt, shrug, roll their eyes. Don't be discouraged. That's just adolescent Morse code for "I'm interested," but too cool to show it. Keep showing up. Connection also means apologizing first. Yes, you, the grown-up. If your anger got the better of you, if your tone was too sharp on it, say, "I didn't handle that well. I'll try better next time." Watch how quickly their defenses melt. Not because they want power over you, but because they just saw humanity in you. And that's disarming. Control is fragile. It relies on fear, leverage, or power. Connection is durable. It weaves threads of trust, honesty, and time. It doesn't always look like obedience, but it builds something stronger. Influence. In the quiet moments, connection says, "I see you." Not just as my child, but as your own becoming person. And that's what they've been aching to hear all along. Because someday when they're grown and far away from your roof, making their own choices, you won't be able to control their actions, but you'll have something far more valuable. A bond. A voice inside them that sounds like yours, not because you yelled it, but because you lived it with love. So if your child is distant, closed off, disrespectful, or cold, don't chase after control. Sit quietly. Reach out. Not to pull them closer, but to say, "I'm here. When you're ready, I'm still here." And one day, they just might come back not as someone you've conquered, but as someone you've truly connected with. So, dear parents, if today you feel ignored, unheard, or even invisible in your own home, please remember, you are not alone. You are growing something sacred. Not perfect children, not obedient machines, but real feeling, thinking humans. Hearts that may rebel today, but will remember your kindness tomorrow. You may not see instant results. You may not hear "thank you" right away, but every time you choose connection over control, calm over chaos, compassion over command, you're building a bridge they can walk back across when they're ready. As we close this journey together, let me leave you with one final thought from Rumi. Raise your words, not your voice. It is rain that grows flowers, not thunder. And that's what you've done. Water with patience, even in storms. If this message spoke to you, touched a tender spot in your journey as a parent, or simply made you smile, please take a moment to support us by liking this video. It helps more parents find the peace they're searching for. Subscribing to our channel so you never miss another heartfelt reminder that you're doing better than you think. Commenting below, share your experience, your struggles, or even your favorite quote. And most of all, share this video with a fellow parent, a friend, or someone who just needs to hear. You're not failing, you're learning. We grow stronger when we grow together. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for watching, listening, and being part of this compassionate community. If you have any suggestions, feedback, or stories to share, we would love to hear from you in the comments. Your voice matters here. Until next time, keep showing up with love even when it's hard. Because love always listens. And someday, so will they.